In the late 1980s, America built offices like saloons on payday. Then the customers stopped coming and the piano quit too. Banks didn't just lend money, they shoveled it out with both hands. Risk was the rodeo, and everyone thought they were champion. Savings and loans once funded quiet homes and tidy lawns. Now they chased skyscrapers like cowboys chasing a gold rumor. This was the commercial real estate bust of the late 1980s. Over 1,000 thrifts failed and taxpayers got the bar tab. The trouble started earlier with deregulation and rising interest rates. Give a gambler new cards and bigger chips, guess what happens? New laws let thrifts make riskier commercial property loans. The rulebook got thinner and the bets got fatter. The Garn-St. Act opened the lending gates wide. Thrifts rode out like cowboys with someone else's horse. But interest rates had already shot up in the early 1980s. Old low-rate mortgages paid peanuts while deposits wanted steak. Margins shrank and balance sheets started to sweat. Some thrifts chose caution, others chose rocket fuel. Rocket fuel meant commercial real estate and big development deals. Office parks sprouted faster than roadside diners. Developers pitched towers with glossy brochures and bold promises. Bankers nodded like bobbleheads in a pickup truck. Underwriting standards often took a vacation without notice. If the deal wore a tie, it got a loan. Texas and the Southwest built especially fast and loose. Oil money slowed later and buildings kept showing up anyway. When oil prices fell, local economies took a punch. Empty offices don't pay rent, no matter how pretty. Then came the Tax Reform Act of 1986. It trimmed juicy real estate tax perks developers loved. Some projects stopped making sense on paper overnight. The math sobered up faster than a cowboy at sunrise. Thrifts were now deep in commercial property loans. That was new territory with plenty of hidden snakes. One famous player was Lincoln Savings in California. Its boss, Charles Keating, played the game loud. Keating pushed aggressive investments and property exposure. Regulators worried, but pressure rode shotgun. 5 U.S. senators later faced scrutiny over intervention. The press called them the Keating Five. Politics and property made risky dance partners. The music stopped and everyone checked their pockets. Another case was Silverado Savings in Colorado. Neil Bush sat on its board during wild lending days. Silverado failed after risky real estate loans soured. The bill did not vanish into thin air. Regulators sometimes delayed closures hoping for miracles. Hope is not a capital ratio. Losses kept growing while buildings kept emptying. You cannot lease space to tumbleweeds. Commercial prices dropped across many U.S. regions. Loan collateral shrank like a cheap wool sweater. Defaults rose and thrift balance sheets cracked. The rodeo clown was now the risk manager. Federal insurance funds were stretched dangerously thin. The safety net had holes big enough for a truck. Investigators like William K. Black warned about control fraud. Some insiders were looting from the saddle. The boom was ending, and the cleanup would be historic. Uncle Sam was reaching for his wallet. By 1988, failures rolled in like overdue bills. Regulators stopped whispering and started kicking doors. Commercial projects stalled across major cities. Half-finished towers stood like expensive skeletons. Vacancy signs multiplied faster than rabbits. Rent checks became rare wildlife. Loan defaults surged through thrift portfolios. Paper profits turned into paper cuts. The insurance backstop was FSLIC, and it was overwhelmed. The bucket had no bottom. Congress faced a spreading financial brushfire. Hearings filled up fast with angry questions. Comptroller Charles Bosher warned losses were massive. The numbers did not blink first. Investigations uncovered reckless and sometimes fraudulent lending. Some cowboys were robbing their own bank. Lincoln Savings became a national scandal story. Investors and retirees felt the sting. Charles Keating was later prosecuted and convicted. His empire folded like a cheap tent. The Keating 5 hearings gripped national news. Politics met property in public view. Voters learned how influence tried to bend oversight. Trust took a hard spill. Silverado's failure added more fuel to the blaze. Insider lending drew heavy scrutiny. Civil suits followed board members and executives. Legal boots hit the trail. Developers walked away from broken projects. Keys were mailed back like apology notes. Banks inherited buildings they never wanted. Landlord was not in their job description. Markets for commercial property froze up. Buyers hid like poker players with bad cards. Prices fell across offices, hotels, and retail. Appraisals aged badly overnight. In 1989, Congress created the Resolution Trust Corporation. Cleanup crew officially hired. The RTC took over failed thrift assets nationwide. It became America's biggest yard sale. Thousands of properties moved through RTC hands. Office towers met auction tables. Taxpayer cost estimates climbed into the tens of billions. Nobody found that funny. Communities lost jobs tied to failed projects. Empty buildings hire nobody. Local banks tightened lending across the board. Credit rode into town and kept going. The credit crunch slowed new construction sharply. Cranes went on vacation. Regulators rewrote rules and capital standards. The poker table got stricter. Examiners increased oversight visits nationwide. Surprise guests with calculators arrived. Some executives faced bans and penalties. Fancy titles did not stop subpoenas. The era exposed how fast risk can spread. One bad herd spooks the valley. Next came the long cleanup and hard lessons. The bill collector stayed late. By the early 1990s, the damage was fully counted. The real estate party left a mighty mess. Over 1,000 thrifts had failed or closed. That is not a typo, partner. Taxpayer costs were estimated around $100 billion. That saddle was heavy. The Resolution Trust Corporation sold mountains of property. Desks turned into auction corrals. Office buildings, hotels, and land changed hands cheap. Bargain hunters rode in smiling. Some investors made fortunes buying distressed assets. Cleanup created new cowboys. Regulators toughened capital and lending standards. The fence got taller. Exams became stricter and more frequent. Surprise visits were back in fashion. Risk concentration rules gained new teeth. No more betting the ranch on one deal. Fraud cases produced convictions and industry bans. Some boots were kicked out for good. Investigators described patterns called control fraud. Insiders used firms like personal wallets. Regulator and scholar William K. Black explained the playbook. Loot first, report later. The crisis reshaped how regulators viewed incentives. Pay plans suddenly looked suspicious. Communities slowly absorbed empty properties. Some were reborn, others stayed ghosts. Banks returned to more traditional lending models. Boring made a comeback tour. Commercial lending did return, but more cautious. Spurs were checked twice. Developers now faced tighter scrutiny and equity demands. Easy money left town. Historians rank this among America's worst bank crises. It rarely gets a parade. It proved deregulation without guardrails can backfire. Horses need fences. It also showed politics can cloud supervision. Sunshine helps bookkeeping. Commercial real estate eventually recovered in stages. Markets do heal slowly. But lenders remembered the bruises for years. Saddles were padded thicker. Training and oversight became industry priorities. Risk class was mandatory. New generations of bankers studied the collapse. Nobody wanted that rerun. The late 1980s bust left a permanent lesson. Fast money can be slow poison. Growth needs discipline, not just enthusiasm. Spurs and brakes both matter. Records, audits, and skepticism became valued tools. Trust, but bring a calculator. The towers rose again in later decades. This time, lenders watched closer. The story is not about buildings alone. It is about incentives and judgment. When risk is mispriced, somebody pays later. Usually the quiet taxpayers in town.